Jace Marlowe hadn't meant to ride through Redwater Ridge that morning. He was chasing a stray calf gone loose near the canyon trail, grumbling about fence posts and half-frozen ground. But something about the wind made him stop. It wasn't just cold. It carried something else. A sound. Faint, like the cry of an animal too weak to stand. He turned his horse toward the ridge and rode slow, eyes scanning the rise of red rocks and dead trees that scarred the horizon like broken fingers. Then he saw it. At first, it looked like a grotesque scarecrow tree, something out of a fever dream, limbs hanging from limbs, cloth fluttering in the breeze. But the closer he got, the more his gut clenched. It wasn't cloth. It was skin, arms, 8 of them. 8 girls, Apache by the look of them, hanging by their wrists from one massive dead juniper, their bodies limp, faces bruised and blooded, eyes shut against the wind. They'd been strung up like trophies, left to die slowly, beaten, starved, sunburned, mouths cracked and bleeding. Jace's breath hitched. It wasn't just rage that rose in him. It was memory. One of the girls, maybe 13, had a faint carved symbol on her forearm, a line split by 2 feathers. The same mark the woman had who once dragged him from a gulch when he was gut-shot and alone, years ago. An Apache woman who had risked her life to carry a white man out of Comancheria without ever asking for thanks. Jace had never forgotten. Now fate was staring him dead in the eye. He dropped the calf rope, stepped down, and pulled his rifle from the scabbard. Whoever did this left them to die like animals, like warnings. But Jace didn't believe in leaving things broken. He checked the ridgeline, every bush, every shadow. No movement, no sound, just wind and whimpers. He cocked the rifle, muttered something low to his horse, and walked forward, past the line of blood, past the edge of fear, straight into the kind of choice that changes a man forever. Jace had made his choice, but choices like that don't end with a pull trigger or a good deed. They begin there. After cutting the first girl down, her body sagging into his arms with the weight of near death, he didn't look back. He didn't count the cost. He worked in silence, jaw clenched, lifting each one gently as if handling something sacred. Some were older, maybe 20, others barely past childhood, but all of them bore the same wounds: sunburnt skin, cracked lips, dirt crusted on blood. They never screamed, not once. Their silence haunted him more than screams ever could. One by one, he hoisted them onto his saddle, walked beside his horse through bitter terrain, and reached his ranch just as dusk stained the hills in bronze. He didn't light the lanterns right away. He wasn't sure if they'd panic. Instead, he laid out blankets in the barn first, offered water, tore strips of cloth for their wrists, and built a fire they could see without feeling trapped. But suspicion hung heavier than smoke. They drank only after the oldest girl nodded, ate only after whispering together in their language, and their eyes never left him, eyes full of questions, fear, and something colder. They didn't speak to him, not directly, but at night, behind the barn wall where he lay pretending to sleep, their voices carried just enough. Apache words, soft, careful, uneasy. Words he couldn't understand but didn't need to. He knew the sound of doubt when he heard it. They were trying to decide if he was a slaver, too, if the rescue had just been a new cage. Jace didn't move. He slept near, but not too close. Cooked without facing them. Gave what he could without asking for trust. Because fear doesn't fade just because the threat is gone. It waits to see if the next man is wearing a different kind of mask. On the 3rd evening, just as the wind kicked up dust along the dry paddock fence, the eldest girl stepped out of the barn. She walked slow, her chin high despite the bruises, and stood between him and the dying sun. "Why did you help us?" she asked. Not curious, not thankful, just steady, like someone measuring the distance between danger and hope. Jace met her eyes, not with pride, not with regret, just the kind of quiet that comes from carrying ghosts. Tassa didn't blink when Jace answered her question. She just stared at him, waiting, as if his silence could tell her more than words ever could. And maybe it did. Because that night, as the fire cracked low and the younger girls curled into one another for warmth, she sat with the others in a circle, and slowly, reluctantly, began to speak. Her voice was dry but sharp, like wind on stone. Their village had been hidden deep in the high mountain basin, far from the paths white men rode, tucked under pine and cloud. Then one morning before light, horses came like thunder. Gunfire, screaming, the dogs going mad. Men with covered faces, rifles, and branding irons. The elders were shot where they stood. Mothers beaten, and 17 children, 17, were taken. Not just any children. Their siblings, cousins, little ones, some only old enough to crawl. The slavers didn't take the older girls. No, they beat them, tied them, and left them hanging as warnings. So the next time we'd know not to fight, Tarsa said coldly. Her gaze hardened. You should ride away. Apache things belong to Apache. But before the silence could settle, another girl spoke. Mita, barely 17, with a healing welt under one eye. The mark you saw, she said, her voice thin. Our mother gave it to us. She saved a stranger once, pulled him from the canyon, bled for him. Jace looked up slowly, hands still, breath quiet. That stranger, he said, was me. The fire crackled. Even the wind outside stilled. And in that silence, something shifted. Not trust, not yet, but the thin thread of something older than memory, a debt carried forward by blood, and maybe a second chance to repay it. At dawn, the air was already dry as bone, the kind that cracks lips before a man can saddle his horse. But Jace rode out without hesitation, flanked by 8 girls who barely looked back at the ranch that had cradled their healing. They moved like a silent unit, Tarsa leading with flint in her eyes, Mita tracking every broken twig, every drag mark in the dirt. Jace didn't ask where they were going. He knew. The trail curved into the red desert, where nothing forgives, not the sun, not the sand, not the men who take what isn't theirs. Wagon tracks cut deep through the red clay, broken branches from desert brush, a torn doll's arm left near a charred campfire. Signs, breadcrumbs of horror. With every mile, the weight grew heavier, not just the sun beating their backs, but the question none of them voiced. Were the children still alive? By the third day, water ran low, and silence fell thick, but no one stopped. They couldn't. That evening, just past a dead arroyo, 3 men stepped into their path. Bounty hunters, armed and smug. We'll take the girls now, one said, grinning beneath dust-caked teeth. There's good money on each one. He barely finished the sentence before Tarsa moved. A blade flashed. Mita followed. Jace dropped one with his rifle. When it ended, dust still danced in the air, and all 3 bounty men bled into the date. Jace looked around. He hadn't saved them. They fought like wolves. What they needed wasn't rescue. It was someone who wouldn't walk away when the blood dried. So he stayed, and kept riding. That night, the fire crackled low beneath a moon carved sharp against the desert sky. The girls sat in a tight semicircle, their faces painted in flickering gold, eyes narrowed not from distrust anymore, but from a deeper question that hung heavier than heat. Mita finally asked what the others had long held in silence. Why do you ride with us, white man? Why do you bleed for our children? Jace didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire like it might swallow his words before they came out. Then, slowly, he exhaled. Because I was one of them, he said. Not the slavers, but close enough. I rode with a mercenary outfit 15 years back. Men paid to break things, scare people, leave marks. The air shifted. No one spoke. He went on. I didn't shoot. I didn't burn. But I didn't stop them either. Not until your mother pulled me from the mud where my own men left me. She saved my life after I'd stood silent while they took yours. A long pause. Then steel hissed, one girl unsheathing her blade. Another rose to her feet. Jace didn't flinch. Do it, he said. But Tarsa raised her hand, voice like ice. Not yet. When the last child is found, she said, then we will decide what your life is worth. By the time they reached the edge of the ravine, the torches of the trade post were already flickering against the coming dawn. From the ridge above, they counted 6 guards on the outer wall, more inside, and, just visible through the cracks in the timbered stockade, Small shapes huddled together behind bar stools. 17. The children. Jace scanned the perimeter, eyes sharp, breath steady. They moved them east at first light. Tassa whispered, crouched beside him. We have hours, maybe less. Jace nodded once. We hit them from 3 sides. You take the east gate. Mita swings from the dry creek bed. I'll take the front and make noise. Tassa studied him for a long moment, then gave the smallest of nods. They moved like shadows. As Jace crept toward the gate, he rigged a bundle of old powder he'd carried since the ranch, tamped it tight, lit the fuse, and ducked. The explosion cracked through the dawn like thunder. Chaos followed. Slavers shouted, scattered. Tassa's team burst through the rear wall, arrows and blades flying. Mita's group swept from the dry creek bed with cries sharp and swift. Jace dropped 2 men before one lunged from the shadows, blade catching him across the ribs as he shielded a crying boy. Blood poured, but he stayed standing. When the last shot rang out, silence fell heavy, pierced only by children's sobs. Tassa moved first, falling to her knees as she pulled a tiny girl into her arms. Mita reached her brother, shaking with relief. One by one, the girls gathered their siblings, holding them close. But no one smiled. No one dared, because dawn was rising fast, and they weren't safe yet. They barely had time to bind wounds and quiet the children before Jace froze, eyes narrowed toward the wind. He tilted his head, listening, not to words, but to rhythm. Hoofbeats. Not random. Not local. A cadence he hadn't heard in years but could never forget. They are coming, he said flatly. Tassa looked up, shoulders tensing. Who? His jaw tightened. The men I once rode with. For a moment, the air felt thinner. He turned to them all. Take the children. Head west. I'll hold them at the canyon mouth. But Tassa stepped forward. No, she said. We finish what they started. Together. When the first rider crested the canyon wall, the trap had already been laid. The girls waited, hidden among stone and thorn. Jace stood in the open, rifle low, not to fight first, but to draw fire. The mercenaries recognized him instantly. They didn't hesitate. Neither did he. Bullets sparked off rock. Arrows flew. Mita struck first, leaping from above with a scream that echoed. Tassa fought like flame, silent and fierce. Jace shielded her when a shot cracked through the air. He took the bullet to the chest and crumpled, pain blooming hot and fast. Around him, the fury of 8 warriors rained down like judgment. When silence finally fell, Jace lay bleeding into the dust. Tassa knelt beside him, torn. Then she saw it, faint, glowing just beneath torn flesh. The mark. Her mother's mark. Passed not by blood, but by mercy. And now, maybe, returned. Jace didn't die, though the wound came close, and though he drifted through pain and fever for days. When he finally opened his eyes to firelight and familiar faces, the first thing he saw was Tassa beside him, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But she'd stayed. They all had. Weeks later, the ranch looked different, not just repaired, but reborn. Children's laughter echoed where silence once lingered. The barn became a schoolhouse. The corral, a place for shared meals. And the hills, once barren, now echoed with a dozen different voices, Apache, English, laughter, lullabies. They called it the Dawn Shelter, a name gifted by the elders who arrived later, bearing supplies and stories. Not a place of charity, but of strength, of second chances. Jace moved slowly, but with purpose, side by side with the girls who no longer looked like survivors, but builders, guardians. Family, not by blood, by choice. And in that quiet merging of 2 broken paths, they forged something new, not forgiveness, not forgetfulness, but a future. If this story touched your heart, let us know where you're listening from, and subscribe for more true Western stories of redemption, courage, and the ones who protect the innocent when no one else will.